Welcome to Impact 2024, our continuing conversation, where we talk about all types of topics from race, religion, current events, everything that you can think of. This is that open space where you can feel free to express yourself by typing your questions and your comments into the comment section, going ahead and putting your input in on our conversation. Again, this is a conversation that we have constantly. Every week we come together so that we can discuss the issues of the day. And so we always ask that you put in your questions and your comments. For those of you who've been here before, you know how it works. You type it in Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're listening from. It pops up on the screen. We address it. So feel free to put in what you want. Jumping in quite hot, but before we do, just want to remind people of who we are. This is an offering of Amani Christian Ministries, and we have many different offerings. Today, on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we have prayer. We have a time from 7 to 7:45, but we pray together as a church, we pray together as a ministry, and feel free to pray with us. On Thursdays, what we have is Thursday Thirst. That's our weekly Bible study. Please join us here on Facebook and YouTube. That's at 8. That's at 7 Eastern Standard Time. And then on Sundays, we have worship service, and that is also here on Facebook and YouTube and in person at the address on the screen. And that is 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Sundays. All right. And of course, we have Impact 2024, where you are joining us right now. All right. As I say oftentimes, that there's a lot going on in the world, because oftentimes there is. Of course, right now we have the election. It's election season. We kind of try to stay away from just talking about election type stuff, because we can talk about that every single day. And that's no one wants to do that. And so we also have plenty of issues going on internationally. Wars all across the world, skirmishes, individual events. We can talk about Ukraine. We can talk about the Middle East. We can talk about the multiple countries in Africa that are having civil wars. We could go on and on and on. And then domestically, we have plenty of issues and things and problems going on here. And so that's where we're going to start today. We're going to hit right on one of those issues. And one of the big news issues that has been talked about over and over again is celebrities getting in trouble. Celebrity men getting in trouble. Celebrity men getting in trouble for doing inappropriate activities, using and abusing their power, and hurting people. People with a lot of money and a lot of power using it to hurt folk. So I'm sitting here, I'm talking to my son. And we're at that age now where we are deciphering that weird level of what is tattling and what needs to be told. And we're trying to figure out and navigate that weird space. So you're sitting here and Johnny didn't wash his hands after he sneezed. Well, I'm trying to explain to my son, well, I don't know if that is, we need to go to the principal and make a big thing level of conversation. That more so is in the tattling area versus such and such brought a kitchen knife to school and it's in their backpack and they were showing it off to everybody. Whereas, all right, I need to tell. And so we're navigating that weird little space. And in the thought process of navigating that space is what I was talking to my son, realized that as adults, it seems like we may be having a hard time navigating that space. Because we bring up somebody like Sean Puffy Combs, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever name you want to call him. People know, and I've referenced it on this particular space multiple times before, people know what's going on with him in his situation where he's being accused of some horrific crimes, abuse, trafficking people, drugging people, all types of horrible things. And what has been talked about is that a lot of people knew. They're saying all of these people knew, and they turned a blind eye because he's rich and he's famous. He would have these parties, and at his parties there would be inappropriate things going on, and plenty of people were at the parties, and plenty of people knew, plenty of people partook, and people were shielding him for years and years. There's always rumors going around that this guy was acting inappropriately, and the reckoning is coming for him, but now the reckoning may also be coming for others. And we go back in history and we talk about some of the other folk who went down. Harvey Weinstein, the producer who was doing horrible things to people, and now he's in jail. Jeffrey Epstein, a super rich individual who was out here, they claim, doing horrible things, and then he committed suicide in jail as he got arrested for trafficking and abusing young girls and other things like that. And they said people knew. And you had plenty of other folk like Bill Cosby, R. Kelly. We can go down the list. And they said people knew, but people weren't saying anything. And it comes to that same situation of what I'm talking to my son about, is we have this culture of, in my age group of no snitching. You don't tell on folk. You especially don't tell the law. You're not telling cops. You're not telling. We keep things in the community. We're not trying to hurt nobody. You don't let them get involved. We have to handle all of our stuff in-house. It even goes down. You look at the church. The Catholic Church had some major issues. Nobody's trying to tell. I'm currently a leader with the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts historically ended up having some issues. And one of the problems was, again, you had people who knew, people who saw, nobody wanted to tell. But more so in this hip hop culture and this hip hop community, that's where I'm really talking to, because that's my generation of where, kind of where I'm coming from. When do we tell and when do we don't tell? Two huge titans in the industry during the time that I grew up, Puff Daddy, R. Kelly, both of them are now in jail. And the question is, everybody knew. Why didn't anybody say anything? Why didn't anybody do anything to stop it? Why didn't anybody tell? And it navigates that space of, like, with my son, was tattling versus seeing something, saying something, doing the right thing. And how do we teach that? To be honest with you, even me growing up, even how we did it was, look, even if something was wrong, even if something was bad, even if something was illegal, you're not going to get the cops involved. You're not going to get the law involved, because they don't act right. They don't do right. Even if you're wrong, they're going to make it worse. If you're hurt, they're going to hurt you more. That was the thought process around a lot of the stuff that we did, or a lot of the ways that, as a young man back in the day, that's the way that we kind of communicated with one another. Like, look, we may be doing something bad, or you may have seen something bad, but if you get others involved, it's going to get worse. And so that mindset is, came to that whole, hey man, no snitching. We handle our stuff in-house. We don't want anybody to get involved. Now, why are we talking about this? Why does this make sense for a current event standpoint? And why does this make sense for a from a Christian point of view program? Well, again, the church was involved in that situation. When people are being hurt and people are being abused, the church would turn a blind eye sometimes. Some of these churches would say, we'll handle it. Same kind of philosophy. Let's keep it in-house. We'll handle it. If we let the outside world, they're not going to understand, and things are going to get worse. We are working on forgiveness. The rest of the world is working on punishing. So let's keep it in the house so that things don't get worse. And as much as that kind of philosophy is in me. From the hip hop standpoint, man, you don't tell the cops anything, man. Don't be no snitch. Don't do this. Whether it be the church, inside the church, outside the church, whether it be inside the streets, outside the streets, whether it be the hip hop community, whether it be whatever other community, country, whatever. Uh, there is a problem in a fine line of, if you don't say something, if you don't do something, then it's going to keep going, and you're going to contribute to it. And then you no longer become, you're never a bystander. You're either an enabler or a participant. Like, you're never really a bystander. We sit back and we watch, and something happens and we don't say anything, then we become an enabler automatically. You don't become a bystander anymore. You become an enabler. If you sit back and you watch it happen and you don't do anything. Not that you have to intervene in the moment, but at some point in time, you got to tell somebody to do something. Otherwise, you're just an enabler. And I know some people are like, well, that's that's not right. You're blaming folks. Yeah, we all got responsibilities. There is technically a Good Samaritan law on the books. That goes across the board. And so all these people, when we talk about the Puffy situation, you got all these people scrambling, all these famous people. They don't want their names to get out there that they knew or that they participated. But worse than participating is you just sat there and you knew, and you didn't say anything. You didn't try to do anything. You knew what he was doing, but you was just like, okay, whatever. And now they're scrambling to be like, well, I didn't know anything. I didn't know. Because, again, that makes you an enabler. If you know what's going on. Now, I get it. Sometimes we get scared. Sometimes we don't want our stuff messed all up. That person can do some retribution against us. And that's a real thing. That's a real thing. And that's why a lot of people don't say anything. They don't want to get involved in things because they don't want harm or negative activities to come towards them. But even with that, and I understand that, you're still an enabler. You're scared, and you're doing the right thing you feel for yourself and your family, but you're still an enabler. I mean, those two things can still be true. You cannot be somebody that I want to, you're so bad because you were scared, and no, they're not going to do that. You were scared. We all get scared. When we sit back and we're scared and we don't want to do anything in our inaction, that is true. And I don't think too many people blame folk for that, but we're still going to be an enabler at the same time. Those two things are true. And so you're not an awful person. Don't think because you're an enabler, you're an awful person, but I think you're an enabler. But I think what we have to do is come to that conclusion that every time we make that decision of whether it's a tattle, whether we're snitching, whether we're telling or not, are we enabling? Are we allowing the situation to continue? Are we just sitting by and allowing more people to get hurt? Are we having somebody who may have a problem, a sickness, or may just be, genuinely not a nice person? Are we allowing them to flourish in their sickness and their not niceness and their problemness? As a community, we sit back and we say no snitching, but it really just comes down to this. Are you going to stop the issue? And if you can't stop the issue, are you going to talk to the people who can stop the issue? You can't let somebody hurt and then hurt again. And so for all of the people who sit back and, in the Puffy situation, and are going to sit back and say, well, I just didn't want to tell on another person in the game like me. He's just like me. He grew up from where I grew up. I didn't want to tell on somebody like that. Or, he's a black man and I'm a black man and I don't want to tell on somebody. Or, he's from the hip hop community. I'm from the hip hop community. I don't want to tell anybody. It's code of the streets. He's from the streets. I'm from the streets, whatever. As much as we all do that, and I look, to be honest, man, I respect that in the sense of what you're saying. But what I don't think is that we can allow things to continue. There is a difference between not telling and allowing things to continue. There is a difference between, all right, I heard you out here doing some crazy stuff. If I hear about that again, I'm going to have to tell. Or getting somebody some help or making sure that this has to stop. I think that that's the responsibility. The responsibility first for most people is first to themselves. For the great individuals is first to others. But either one of those that you're going to put into play. If you believe that the Word of God is telling you to have your family in mind first, that's one thought. If you believe the Word of God and being a great person allows you that you need to have others first and put them before you, that's a great thought. But with either one you think is right, and we don't have to debate which one is right and which is wrong. The perpetrator, the causer of the issue, should their thoughts of keeping them safe should be the secondary one after you've kept I guess the victim and everything straight. I think that we have to come to a reality, that moment where we come to understand that allowing bad activity within our communities is not okay. Like allowing it to flourish and continue is not okay. And we have to be able to stop it. We have to be able to put our time in, put our work in, do whatever we have to do to stop it. And so if that means you have to tell the law, as they say, tell the cops, then you have to do it. If that means you have to confront them and do it some other way, you have to do it. But you can't sit back and just say, I'm not going to tattle, I'm not going to snitch. And I don't think that that's appropriate. It's hard. I get it. It's tough. I go back to the conversation I had with my son because it's tough. You sit back and you be like, well, how do I know when it's a situation when I tell, and how do I know when it's a situation when I don't tell? I don't know. If it looks you always say if it looks dangerous and blah blah blah, you need to tell and blah, 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 But the reality of the matter is you don't know. Sometimes you don't. Most of the times you do. It's obvious. But sometimes you don't know. And so the best thing for all of us to do is, if we see something that's going on crazy, let's just say something. Let's for me. This is me, y'all. This is me. I have to grow up out of that old mindset. Look, that worked great for me in the 90s, in the 2000s. Put my age out there. That was cool back then. In the 80s, when I was young. All right, I'm gonna stay to the streets. But now, I guess as an adult, I need to grow out of that, to grow into a spot of I'm not gonna let anybody get hurt. And if you're hurting people, you have to. I'm snitching. I'm telling you, I'm not letting you hurt anybody else. It's not happening. And the great part about this new society, versus where we were before, is that I think that the younger people now have an understanding of that more than we did. It's different. They gonna tell. They're not gonna let you abuse people and use people in bad ways. They gonna tell, and I'm so proud of them for that. And we need to encourage the young people to do that. You need to tell. You need to tell. And so as a church, it's good that we had that great reckoning, especially with the Catholic Church and the issues that they have. And I say the Catholic Church because they have the big issues, but I'm not putting it on them like that didn't happen everywhere, because I'm pretty sure their issues did. Again, like I said, I'm associated with the Boy Scouts, and they've historically had issues. The good part, even with the Boy Scouts, you got to tell. And they say this is zero chance policy. If you don't tell, you in trouble, everybody in trouble. You better tell. And so I think that that's what the mindset, let's just tell. Let's just kind of put it out there. I know we don't want the people involved and people getting hurt unnecessarily. Sometimes folk make mistakes, and I get that. And we got it. We can't lose that kind of sensibility. But we can't. There's a difference between, all right, you made a mistake, and allowing the activity to continue, and we cannot accept that. All right. Well, that's it. Kind of hit on that. Didn't have any comments, so we really didn't go down that path. But I appreciate everybody who joined us. Please consider the conversation, and if you have any comments, you still can put them in later on. Always type your questions and your comments in the comment section, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. Keep the conversation going. But I just want everybody to consider that. Consider that as we go on. Consider that when you're talking to younger people. Consider that as older people, where our stance is and where we're at, and can make sure that we know that we cannot sit back and let people do bad things. We got to stop it. That is our job. Side note, I'm just going to throw it in there, and I don't care what people say. Same thing with voting. That's why you have to vote, because you have to do something and stop it. You can't just sit back and be like, oh, well, whatever. You know, that's not okay. It's the same situation to me. You know, see something, say something. You see what's going on, then you need to get out here, get in that line, get registered, get in that line on election day or earlier and put in your vote. Don't just stand by and be an enabler. All right. As a reminder, we are Amani on Thursdays, Thursday Thirst. Please join us on this Thursday at 7 for our weekly Bible study. Join us on this Sunday at 10 for our weekly worship service. And then join us again next week at 7 for prayer. Pray with us during that time from between 7 and 7:45. Your prayer can be 1 minute long. It can be 30 seconds. It can be the whole 45 minutes. Just pray during the time that we're praying so we can all pray together and bring our issues, concerns, and praise up to God. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a good one. Join us again. Impact 2024.